This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everyone. This next guest brings a lot of awareness to a lot of different areas. Many of those are overlooked and don't get the attention that they truly deserve. We're talking about a director, an app developer, an author, somebody who is part of an amazing documentary, and so much more. On the show today, Van Ethan Levy. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really, really excited to be here.
You do a lot. I want to start with the book. Tell me about your book.
Thank you so much. Yes, so I wrote a book that recently won a National Impact Award. It's called Exploring My Identities. And it's an interactive workbook, and it's a resource designed to guide individuals through self-discovery and the process of unlearning harmful societal messages, especially around gender and or identity. And it focuses on helping people recognize and address the internalized transphobia, understanding key concepts like privilege, microaggressions, and identity, and ultimately to cultivate spaces that are affirming for themselves and for others. This book is inclusive and accessible and meant for people of all identities, and it encourages critical reflection as a pathway for growth and awareness.
Now, when you say it's a book, and I'm pretty sure I heard you say it's a workbook, is that correct?
An interactive workbook, yes.
Interesting. Does that mean there's sections where there's questions where you can reflect or journal? Tell us about that part.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Thank you so much. So I've broken it down so that you want to start at the beginning and move through it, not jump around. Obviously, you can do whatever you want. And it's broken down in ways where it'll give you some space where it has information. I know a lot of viewers can't see this video, but I do have it here in case folks can. So it'll give you some information, let's say gender and pronoun assumptions and what do you do. It'll explain what that means, and then it'll ask you a question to do your own self-reflection and give you the space to write it out. I found that people tend to be able to learn more when they can apply it and integrate it within themselves.
So would you say that this book is right for somebody that's exploring their identity and everything connected to it within society?
Yes, and this book is applicable to every single human. So nobody is immune to our internalized transphobia. And what I mean by that is that if I were to show somebody the color blue and say, which gender is this? Most people are going to say blue. People aren't going to say it's just a color. It's not related to identity. It's not related to gender because of how much we've internalized this. Or if I say, who has a beard? People are going to say men have beards or boys have beards. When in reality, it's not just, beards aren't just male, female, non-binary. It's just a beard. And so it helps us identify the ways in which we've internalized transphobia and are perpetuating it and causing harm. Right? We're so quick when we see somebody to say, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am, but we don't actually know what that person's identity is and what feels affirming to them. And that's why it's so important that we're all doing the work. It's not just for trans people or not just for allies.
This goes back so many years in terms of what was established, like even the color blue. It's associated with a certain gender. But your point, it doesn't need to be. It's what society has. And that's a basic example, but would you say it's programming? We've been programmed to think a certain way.
Absolutely. It's societal constructs, right? So what the society we're living in, whether it's the world as a whole, or for me, California or San Diego, or the home or the area within that, where I've learned that this is men, this is women, and this is ambiguous, but there's nothing in between. And it does really limit folks. If you think about somebody who maybe is a man who wants to do ballet, but never does it because has so often equated it to femininity, this person is now having to suppress a part of themselves and not be their full, authentic, joyous self who's living and thriving in life, all because of this equation of a construct that society dictated that men should not be in ballerina. And I know that's not across the board. Of course, there are many,
sure,
many ballerinas.
But to your point, let's go right there. If you were to take 100 men and say, all right, which of you want to do ballet? There would be probably quite a few that might have considered it, might see the benefits of it in terms of expression, mobility, all of that. But they would never say, yeah, I want to try it. Just to your point.
And even with that point alone, if you take 100 men and you ask them, what does it mean to be a man? You're going to get 100 different examples because masculinity and maleness all is how we've internalized what we've learned in our society, in our home, in our churches, whatever we've been exposed to.
I believe in our society, especially in the Western culture, the biggest fail ever for males, if you will, is that, and it goes back so far, men don't cry, big boys don't cry, man up, and all of that. It has squashed the male, if you will, that gender, to not express emotion. And I see it changing, and I'm gratified to see that changing. But one example of how society has essentially programmed us.
Absolutely. And then you look at the trickle effect. So if you're told as a man that it's only appropriate to feel happy, angry, horny, right? Like these emotions that are okay for men to feel, but expressing that you hurt my feelings when you teased me, or I'm feeling sad, or the way it works is that the more that we're pushing it down, it's like taking a soda bottle and just shaking it. Eventually, when you twist it, it's going to explode. And that trickle effect is that if you're dysregulated and you're not able to express how you're feeling, but it's okay for you to be angry because that's acceptable, that's going to come out in anger, which can come out in different forms, physical, emotional, whatever it might be for the person, which now impacts the person that anger is landing on, or the object, or the animal, or whatever might be, because these have to come out in some way, or even physically, right? If we look at autoimmune or headaches or backaches, the different ways. So it's going to come out in some way, but not in a way that would have potentially been safer if I just said, hey, Steve, I'm really sad right now because you said X, Y, and Z.
Right. Or if I said, I would love to try ballet. Is there a class coming up? It seems like it's about suppression. And I'm right there with you in studying this within my journey, that we hold so much trauma, negative energy, and that's everyone. And then there's where it goes bad, where it can manifest in rage, frustration, mental challenges, certainly physical health, and all of that. It's got to go somewhere. Energy's got to go somewhere. And yeah, there's probably many of us who aren't being true to our authentic self and experiencing chronic illness and disease because we're holding a lot in. Would you say so?
Absolutely. And even impacting our interpersonal relationships. We need community. Not, I can't say 100%, right? Not everybody needs community, but I'm going to guess most people need community in some capacity. And if we're not able to connect because we can't show up as our authentic self, we end up feeling very lonely and ostracized, or that we're the problem, or everybody else is the problem. And navigating the world, right, that can lead to increased depression, suicide, anxiety, and so much more, right? Suppressing one emotion it could have so many impacts. We've only named not even the tip of the iceberg.
I agree with you. And I call it the emotional backpack. We start very young. Well, a lot of this starts in our childhood, 0 to 7. And then it goes on from that point, and we're just taking things and throwing it in that backpack. And after a while, you can't even navigate. You can't even walk. You can't even regulate emotion because it's gotten so heavy. It's got to go somewhere at some point and be purged. Tell us about your journey, Van. Where did that begin for you to get you to this point, to a book, a documentary, and more?
Thank you. That's a really great question. I'm just going to take a moment. Could you ask it just one more time, please?
Yeah, your journey. Where did it start for you, where you got to somebody that writes an award-winning book, helps people make a lot of realizations, the documentary, and everything? Where did it start?
Thank you. So my start, it didn't really come from any type of inspiration or opportunity. The reality is that it came from survival. So as a child, I was forced into conversion therapy. I was sent across the United States to multiple conversion camps with the intention of curing me of being queer, of being trans, of being autistic, of being disabled. I spent the entirety of my adolescence enduring this violence. And while many people think conversion therapy is a thing of the past, it still exists today. And so my work is rooted in transforming that pain into education, access, and affirming care so that others don't have to go through what I did. And if they do, they can hold on to the hope and hope that they can survive, grow up, and become adults and even elders. So when the pandemic hit, I had maybe $2,000 in my bank account and I had no job and I panicked. I started seeing more and more therapy clients, sometimes up to 15 people in a single day, while still advocating for accessibility, inclusion, and harm reduction in the mental health field, as well as other fields, education, medical care. But I kept getting so much pushback, even from those calling themselves allies, medical and mental health professionals, nonprofits claiming to serve trans and non-binary communities, and many more communities. This stress was really impacting my health as well as my livelihood was constantly being threatened. So one of my mentors, her name is Dr. Gada Osman, told me something that changed my life. She said, stop wasting your energy doing emotional labor for people who don't want to learn and use that time to create. So that's exactly what I did. I wrote a book for allies and community members to help them reflect on how they embody transphobia and how they can build practical strength-based tools to create safer spaces. And then from there, I created the documentary, The Do Something Trans and Non-Binary Identities, a film made entirely by trans and non-binary people, meant to raise awareness of our lived experience and a call to action for folks. And it's not just a film, it's an invitation to build affirming safer spaces for ourselves and one another. And then from there, I launched the Do Something Identities, which was the first ever, at least to my knowledge, international conference where every single person involved was a non-cis person who was financially compensated for their time, labor, and expertise. From then, I went on to create the No More Gatekeeping Provider List, which is a resource of professionals who've agreed to write letters for access to affirming care for identification documents as well as medical affirming care in just one session. And then from that, I developed the No More Gatekeeping app, which is a tool for medical and mental health providers. And it guides them through a trauma-informed assessment and it auto-generates letters for clients to access that life-saving care. It's secure, it's private, all data stays on the user's device, but it's designed to remove barriers for trans, non-binary, and many more LGBTQ, PIA2S plus folks. Simultaneously, I developed asynchronous recorded trainings that offer continuing education units. So providers can learn on their own time and still meet professional requirements while gaining critical knowledge about trauma-informed trans-affirming care. And all of this started because I wanted to build a nonprofit rooted in for the community, by the community. What began as survival has become a platform for radical change, and I'm just getting started.
Wow. So many questions. So let's go to, I think you said LGBTQPIA, and there's a plus.
2S plus.
Thank you. What's the plus mean?
So the plus is to be inclusive because the reality is that we all hold privilege in different ways. So I don't know every single identity that exists. So I know that I'm going to erase them by not including them. So the closest thing I can do is adding a plus sign, even if you're just saying LGBT, adding that plus indicates I know that I didn't represent you, but I also know that you exist.
So it's really about inclusion.
Yes.
Gotcha. Now you mentioned mental health and medical providers. What do you want them to know, or what should they know?
So many things come up for that. I think first and foremost, at the end of the day, we will never know more about somebody than they know about themselves. So if you think about it, you majority of the time have a provider who's cis, which means the marker the person was assigned at birth aligns with the person's identity. Somebody assigned male at birth, identity is male, they are a cis person. Most of our providers are cis people who are assessing if somebody is truly trans. That would be like a woman assessing if you're truly a man, right? There's no actual assessment to determine who you are. Only you, Steve, will know what your identity is. Only me, Van, will know what my identity is. Nobody is going to know that more than ourselves, especially if we're not even part of the community. And even if we were, right? Even if there was a man assessing you if you truly were a man, we have all of our internalized constructs of what we've decided is male, when the reality is none of that is rooted in realness. All that matters is who you tell me you are is exactly who you are. And so I would love medical and mental health providers to know, trust your clients. Even if you don't understand it, it doesn't mean that they're lying or that it's wrong, or if you've never heard about it, it just means that your privilege has prevented you from being aware that it exists.
Hmm. The labels aren't even important. I feel it's who are you as a person? You know, who are you, Van? How would you describe you? Who are you?
I would describe myself as somebody who is heart centered, who is eager to learn, who really prioritizes doing the best I can to be compassionate and kind and continue to learn the ways in which my privilege prevents me from creating safer spaces. The reason I consistently use safer versus safe, I will never be able to create a safe place for every single human because I will always be unaware of the ways in which my language impacts somebody. But to me, safer communicates an action that I'm doing everything I can in this moment to make it as safer as possible with the willingness to continue to learn and be accountable and make those shifts. So me as a person, I really thrive, or I really prioritize how can I make this world safer for others as equally as for myself. And then trying to balance the two, because sometimes what might make it safer for me might actually make it unsafe for somebody else. So how do we hold that dialectical so that we can coexist in a way that doesn't cause harm to either folks in the dynamic?
And it's a great point because it's very subjective. What's safe for me might not be safe for you. And you can never get to the point where I feel completely safe. Does anybody on this planet feel 100% safe, even at this time? As I hear you speak and I process this, I don't think so. I think it's impossible to feel 100% safe in every area, everything, and if you do, it's probably a false sense of security. And why? Because it goes back to our childhoods and things that, is in our subconscious that is preventing us from feeling 100% safe. That makes sense?
It does, and there's the additional piece of oppressive and harm, right? So every space I go into, I'm gonna be mispronounced, I'm gonna be misgendered, I'm gonna be sirred, I'm gonna be ma'amed, I'm gonna be he'd, I'm gonna be like nobody is ever going to say, "Oh, welcome, MX Levy," or using they pronouns. And so that in and of itself is a continuation of adding to the systematic oppression and the trauma that I'm going to experience, versus having past trauma that then gets triggered in spaces to create safety. And so I thank you for bringing that up so I can clarify that the safety that I'm referring to is around systematic oppression and action and like things that prevent people from accessing care. So with the new administration, me as a non-binary person in certain states, it's or federally, right, it's illegal for me to just exist. It would be illegal for me to go to Texas and to use a restroom. It'd be illegal for me to say that I'm trans in Florida, right? So if we look at the laws that have passed, that's an actual livelihood safety issue that then gets reminded every time I mispronounced, I misgendered.
The book and workbook recently received an award, the International Impact Book Award, right?
Yes, it did. I want to say a
Wow.
few months ago, which is really exciting.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Wow. What did that feel like, on your journey? This is, a lifelong journey that got you to this point, with a lot of twists and turns, ups and downs, and all of that. How do you describe that feeling when you get recognized for an award like that?
To be honest, there hasn't even been space to even hold or experience that excitement. Like I'm constantly in survival mode of having to address all of so I would say at least 1,000 times a week, at least 100 times a day, if not more, in my experience, different forms of transphobic violence, as well as ableism, misogyny, so much more. And so between having to decipher, do I address this and show up for myself, or do I let this go for my safety, on top of having to work, having to deal with chronic illness, having to deal with agonizing pain, there isn't energy or capacity to just exist and say, hey, I've won an award. I've won 14 awards for the documentary. I won an award for the book. All the different things that folks would feel so accomplished about. And that's something actually I've been speaking with my boyfriend about, is how do we create more space to experience the joys of what's come from the work that I have done. And so it's I wish I could answer the question differently, but that's the best I got.
Well, I appreciate your transparency, and it's there's a lot to process, and you have goals. You have goals. It's almost, now the award, fantastic, big achievement, great accolades for the work you put into the book, but it's almost as if it's in the rear view because you're going forward in making awareness for, with all of this, everything we're talking about. What do you want people to know? What should they know overall? Like the average person, trying to process gender identity and all of that. What do you want them to know?
That's a great question. It's something I think about a lot. I think a few things that come up is at the end of the day, you are doing the best you can with the tools you have in the moment you're in, and encouraging yourself to lean into the willingness to continue to learn how to show up better. So letting go of this, I've messed up, I'm a failure, I've made a mistake. These are learning experiences. And so we can get stuck in the shame and guilt, or we could take what we've learned from it and find gratitude in that learning experience to make that shift. And so number one, I tell people, trust yourself. No one will ever know you better than you know yourself. Trusting your gut. And we're so gaslit in our society to not trust that gut when people tell us we're being too sensitive, all of that. So trusting yourself.
Thank you for saying that, because top 5 things in my journey, that's one of them. Your intuition, it, and also love yourself. It's not easy. I get it. Being able to look in the mirror and say, I love you. A lot of people can't do it. Some people would cry trying to do it, but nobody is going to care about you. Nobody's going to love you more. Nobody's going to understand you more than you. There's no getting around that. So it's starting that relationship with yourself or fortifying that. And I'm sure this workbook and book can help people do that. Van, how do we connect? How do we find you? How do we learn more?
Thank you. I do want to answer that. I just want to add one more piece to what you shared.
Ahead. Sure.
And I think like exactly what you shared, I think what I think people struggle with is holding that dialectical is I can love myself for who I am while also holding equally that I want to continue to grow as a human, and they don't cancel each other out.
No, because look at it this way. Let's say that you've got somebody you're close to. Do you want to share with them and show them things? You want them to learn. You want them to move forward in their life. Well, think about that being you to you. It doesn't end just because I found me. It doesn't end there. It begins there. What's your website, Van?
So my website is Van Ethan Levy, VANETHANLEVY.com.
Super simple to find, a lot of insight there, and certainly links for the book, whether you want to, paperback, Kindle, whatever. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for the, putting a microscope on something, and a lot of insight, and again, your transparency. I very much appreciate it and look forward next time we get together.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me, and it's been wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Likewise. We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.